The death penalty violates the fundamental human right to live. However, to receive such a sentence, the criminals in question must have committed severe crimes, from murder to acts of terrorism. Before execution, condemned criminals are allowed to give the public their final words. Whether it is a chilling statement aimed at shocking or upsetting those in attendance, a lighthearted statement that attempts to get a few chuckles, or a final slap in the face of society, criminals throughout the years have had some pretty exciting things to say in the minute before taking their last breath. Welcome to another episode of Crime Analyst. Here are some of the weirdest last words of death row inmates, so be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Jimmy L. Glass was an American convicted murderer who was sentenced to death by the state of Louisiana. Glass escaped from a parish jail with his partner in crime, Jimmy Wingo, on Christmas Eve, 1982, robbing and murdering an elderly couple in Louisiana. Both blamed each other for the crime, and both ended up in the electric chair. It was said that Glass was grinning as he was confined in the electric chair. His last words were, "I'd rather be fishing." John Wayne Gacy was convicted of the rape and murder of 33 men between 1972 and his arrest in 1978. He became known as the Clown Killer, thanks to the numerous parties he attended where he worked as a children's entertainer wearing a clown suit and full face makeup. All of his victims were killed in his suburban Norwood Park ranch house, most of them strangled or asphyxiated, and Gacy buried 26 of those bodies in the crawl space beneath his home. In 1980, he was sentenced to die for 12 of those killings, and he was executed by lethal injection on May 10, 1994. His last words were, "Kiss my ass." Eileen Wuornos was born in Michigan and abandoned by her parents at an early age. By the time she was in her teens, she was working as a prostitute and robbing people to support herself. Dubbed America's first female serial killer, Wuornos was convicted of 6 of the murders, which landed her on the state's death row. Before she died by lethal injection on October 9, 2002, she invoked the film Independence Day. Her last words, "I'd like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus on June 6th. Like the movie, big mothership and all. I'll be back." She hasn't been back since, but many documentaries were made about her and the famous film Monster, which had her portrayed by Charlize Theron in 2003. Barbara Elaine Graham was an American criminal convicted of murder. Graham was the 3rd woman in California to be executed by gas. She was a prostitute, drug addict, and a murderess who was executed in the gas chamber at San Quentin in 1955, along with 2 accomplices. Graham beat an elderly woman to death when a robbery went wrong. Her last words were, "Good people are always so sure they're right." Billy Wayne Coble murdered his estranged wife's parents and brother in 1989. Hours after the U.S. Supreme Court denied a petition seeking a stay of execution, the 70-year-old said, "Yes, sir, that will be $5. I love you, and I love you. Mike, I love you. Where's Nellie at? I love you. That will be $5. Take care." The meaning of his words is a mystery until date. Towery was sentenced to death after strangling Mark Hones to death after robbing his Phoenix home in 1991. Before he was executed by lethal injection in March 2012, he broke down into tears, apologized to Jones's family and his own family, and said his life had been one mistake after another. Then he said, as he appeared to be crying, "I love my family. Potato, potato, potato." His reference to potatoes was a message to a nephew who witnessed the execution and referred to the sound made by a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. His lawyer said it was Towery's way of telling his nephew that everything was okay. Charles Carl Panzram was an American serial killer, pederast, rapist, child molester, arsonist, robber, and burglar. Panzram claimed to have committed 21 murders and raped over 1,000 men and boys. He ended the written confession by saying, "For all these things, I am not slightly sorry." After being locked up and escaping several times, he was executed in September 1930 for the murder of a prison employee at Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary. As officers tried to place a black hood over his head, he spat in the executioner's face. Then, when asked for any last words, he responded, "Yes, hurry it up, you Hoosier bastard. I could kill 12 men while you're screwing around." His grave at the Leavenworth Penitentiary Cemetery is marked only with his prison number, 31614. Peter Kürten was a German serial killer known as the Vampire of Dusseldorf and the Dusseldorf Monster, who committed a series of murders and sexual assaults between February and November 1929 in the city of Dusseldorf. Peter Kürten was known as the Vampire of Dusseldorf because he would often drink the blood of his victims, and the Dusseldorf Monster because of the savagery he inflicted on their bodies after killing them. He admitted getting sexual pleasure from killing and seeing blood, and was executed by guillotine in 1931 after being found guilty of 9 murders and 7 attempted murders. He stayed true to his name with his morbid last words: "After my head is chopped off, will I still be able to hear, at least for a moment, the sound of my own blood gushing from the stump of my neck? That would be the pleasure to end all pleasures." Theodore Robert Bundy confessed to killing a total of 30 women from 1974 through 1979 in Washington, Utah, Colorado, and Florida. Although the total number of Bundy's victims is unknown, it is estimated to run above 100. On the night before Ted Bundy was executed, he spent most of his time crying and praying. At 7 a.m. on January 24, 1989, Bundy was strapped into the electric chair at Stark State Prison in Florida. Superintendent Tom Barton asked Bundy if he had any last words, to which he replied, "Jim and Fred, I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." Jim Coleman is Bundy's attorney from Washington, D.C., and Fred Lawrence is a Methodist minister who spent the night praying with him. A cheer went up from more than 200 people waiting in the early morning cold. They were carrying signs expressing glee, outrage, or hatred for Bundy. The signs read, "Bundy BBQ," "Burn, Bundy, burn," "Roast in peace," and "Hey Ted, this buzz is for you." Some sang songs they had written about the serial killer, one to the tune of "On Top of Old Smoky." Timothy McVeigh is best known as the Oklahoma City bomber. He was convicted of setting off a device that killed 149 adults and 19 children at the Federal Building in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, on April 19, 1995. Timothy McVeigh had no final words before being executed by lethal injection on June 11, 2001, in Indiana. McVeigh did leave a handwritten statement that quoted a poem by British poet William Ernest Henley, which reads, "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." McVeigh admitted to investigators after his capture that he was angry at the federal government for their treatment of white separatist Randy Weaver at Ruby Ridge, Idaho in 1992, and with David Koresh and the Branch Davidians at Waco, Texas in 1993. Do you have any last words of death row inmates that you know but couldn't find in the video? You can leave them in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more content from us. Until next time, have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.